Okay, we're holding Perek Mem Aleph, chapter 41 in the Tanya. This chapter and the following chapter are longer chapters than the usual, so we're going to divide them into two parts, this week with Hashem and next week. I would like to say, in a few words, that in this chapter, he begins to describe to us what a true patriot is. When you hear the term patriot, you think one who's very attached to his country and to his people, who believes in them, who will do anything for them. Here we're talking not about a country, but about a patriot of Hashem, a true servant of Hashem. The reason why I call it patriot is because, as you know today, unfortunately, in this country and in many other countries, there's a lot of divisiveness along political lines. Democrats, Republicans, and all kinds of parties, each one with their opinions. But who cares about these ideas and these terms and these descriptions of parties that emphasize a certain policy that they want to follow? It's either you are a patriot or you're not. Either you are devoted to the cause or not. That's the bottom line. All these descriptions don't matter too much. They don't actually define, they don't truly describe where a person's interests are. And they should be in what's the best for the country, and in this case, in what is appropriate for the service of Hashem. When I use the word appropriate, I mean that there's various levels of service to Hashem, with some individuals being more capable than others. But the bottom line and the common denominator of any Avodat Hashem should be what is right, what is appropriate, what is correct and acceptable. Even though there are some who are a lot more involved and a lot more dedicated, with a lot more fervor. It is possible for an individual to do a lot more. There are even husbands that do a lot for their wives and wives that do a lot for their husbands. It does not mean that those who do less than them are any worse than them. Each one according to his level, according to his training, according to his understanding, and so forth. And in this chapter, we will see a little bit about Avodat Hashem taking on different levels. And he's going to tell us that don't worry, even if you're doing the Avodat Hashem on a lower level than what it could potentially be, you're still considered, to some extent, a servant of Hashem. You can still be a patriot, as long as you intended to be that way, as long as you really mean it, as long as you are sincere, as long as you try. And that's the ikar. That's what we need to remember when it comes to the service of Hashem, when it comes to fulfilling a mitzvah. Are we trying? Are we trying hard enough? Or, God forbid, we don't care enough? A patriot cares. He really cares. In the last few chapters, it was pretty much emphasized to us and made very, very clear that the observance of Torah and mitzvot hu be'eseg yad. It's accessible. Ki lo rachok hu mimcha. It's not far from you. It's not distant from you. It's accessible. It's close to you. Ki karov elecha davar me'od beficha u'belvavecha la'asoto. It is very close to you. It is within reach. A Jew should never feel that this is too difficult for him, this is beyond him, he can never attain the levels that are expected of him. And here Tanya says, you know what, not only is it attainable, even the most simplest individual on his level can attain it too. It may be expressed differently, it may not be 100% the way the greater tzaddikim would do so. Still, it's accessible. What is exactly accessible? The service of Hashem mitoch ahava v'yirah, love and fear. But love and fear can come in different levels. But still, it could be called love and fear of Hashem. In the first 25 chapters of the Tanya, we were taught what the tafkid, what the job of the ahava and yirah are. Why do we need those two, love and fear? Recently, if you recall, he described them as wings. They are the wings for the mitzvot, for the study of the Torah, for the prayer, in order to elevate them to the high realms, spiritual realms, the olamot of the sfirot, the higher world. It is necessary to have love and fear accompany the observance of mitzvot, accompany the learning of the Torah and our prayers. Otherwise, they don't go up too high. Words are cheap. Anybody can express words. Obviously, it's better than nothing. I'm not saying that they're worthless completely, but they can make a big difference. And this is what really the whole emphasis here is. He's trying to tell us, yes, Hashem appreciates every effort being made, but you should know, you have great potential. If you only do a little bit more, if you only apply yourself, and you insert ahava v'yirah into the mitzvot, into the Torah, you can attain tremendous levels in this world and in the world to come. What distinguishes a great man, a tzaddik, from one who's not such a big tzaddik, he's religious, observant, he's God-fearing, is how much effort one puts in. As the rabbis tell us in Pirkei Avot, lefum tzara agra, it's according to the effort will be the reward. Two individuals performing the same mitzvah, the same good deed. Nonetheless, one may be doing the same mitzvah in a more grander way, with more kavanah, with more intent. He may be walking to shul 3 miles. The other one is across the street. They're doing the exact same thing. One is applying a lot more effort. One is focusing on his prayers. One is spending more money in doing the mitzvah than someone else. All of this matters. All of this counts. There's no doubt whatsoever about it. That upstairs, the two mitzvot are totally different. So, the love and fear of Hashem are important, and they are accessible. They are not out of reach. The only question is, at what level are we talking about? What exact love and fear will this individual demonstrate when he performs the Torah mitzvot? We saw, for example, that love, what's the job of love? The job of love is really to encourage and enable mitzvot aseh, the positive commandments. Because when one has a love, even a low-key level of love for Hashem, it basically means he wants to connect. Rotzeh lidvok Hashem, Yitbarach, wants to become closer to him. And this characteristic that we call ahava, if he has it, he understands it, it helps him in observing mitzvot aseh, positive commandments. That's the purpose of the ahava, to do that which is positive. Then you have the yirah. What is the purpose of fear of Hashem? To help you stay away from lo ta'aseh, from the negative commandment, because we have positive commandments and we have negative. The positive, do this, do that. The negative, don't do this, don't do that. Hold yourself back. So we have ahava, the love, the desire to connect to Hashem, that helps and encourages us to do the positive commandments, and we have the yirah that's necessary to hold us back. Otherwise, if there's no yirah, what's holding back an individual from saying, well, it's not so bad, what's going to happen already? It's not the end of the world. You need a certain level of yirah to deter an individual from chas v'shalom succumbing to his evil inclination, to the Yetzer Hara. In the last few chapters, however, he put more of an emphasis on ahava v'yirah being those wings that elevate the mitzvot, meaning that kavanah, having the proper intent in what we do, is going to make a big difference. So in other words, it's not just that ahava and yirah are important in order to observe the mitzvot. It's also in order for us to have a more complete kavanah to what we're doing. Sometimes a person just begins to pray without any preparation, either by heart or from the Siddur, but doesn't think too much about what he's saying. Perhaps he's thinking already about his business as he's praying. There's no kavanah whatsoever. And as the Kabbalah describes this maaseh, this particular deed, whether it's a mitzvah or prayer, keguf beli neshama, it's like a body without a soul, it's dead. I mean, he may have fulfilled his minimal obligation of praying in the morning, but did he really pray? Did he really communicate to Hashem? It's disconnected. The line is broken. There's no real connection. It didn't really get through. Have you ever sent a fax and the paper got jammed? It's jammed, it won't go through. Or the signal was lost. It won't get through. There are no wings. So in describing Ahavat Yirah as wings, that was referring kavanah, how kavanah can make a big difference. But here, he's saying it's important to understand the basics. The basics of Ahavat and Yirah means that without them, one may never do a mitzvah. In other words, you need a minimal of Ahavat Yirah to be considered a servant of Hashem. But as we will see, there's a difference between one who is a servant and one who is his son. And one who is his son and a servant. He has the two of them, which is in the end what Hashem wants. Hashem wants us to be Banim Atem Hashem Elokechem, we are his children, and Kili Bnei Yisrael Avadim, we are his servants. We are his children and we are his servants. Two different categories, two different levels. So now in this chapter, he's going to tell us that even though Ahavat and Yirah have each one a very separate tafkid, a very separate job, in reality the very, very beginning of everything, the very, very beginning of the service of Hashem involves Yirah. Tchilat Avodat Hashem needs to have the bare bones, as they say in English, called Yirah. In other words, it's not only to deter us from lo ta'aseh, from negative commandments, it is actually a necessity even for the mitzvot aseh. Even to get a Jew to perform the positive commandments, if he doesn't have the bare minimum of Yirah, he may never do it. And if he was doing it for a while, you know what may happen, God forbid? He may drop out. There are dropouts, not just from schools, from religion. How does one become a dropout? Or as it's called today in Israel, unfortunately, Chazar B'She'elah. Why should this ever happen? There's all kinds of factors, and we don't have the time to go into it right now. But obviously this can happen. We're only human. And it can happen to the best of people. No one should ever say it cannot happen to him. We have documented in our history the greatest of the greatest committing mistakes, committing a wrong, intentionally, unintentionally, it makes no difference. Something happened, something went wrong. Either in their upbringing, either in their way of thinking. Had the Yirat Shamayim been a lot stronger, had it been in place, it wouldn't have happened so easily. Now we can't blame them. Why can't we blame them? First of all, we don't know what we were doing there if we were in their shoes. So you can never blame anyone unless you know exactly what happened. Plus, we have a rule, Kol HaGadol Mechavero Yisro Gadol Memeno. The greater the neshama, the greater his Yetzer Hara. You know, people expect the great rabbis to be angels. They're human beings too. They can be tempted. They can fall, chas v'shalom. It has happened. Hopefully they're stronger. They're strong enough to hold themselves back and not allow bribes to influence them, for example. But money talks very loudly. Money is a very powerful bribe. As you know, it's the biggest Yetzer Hara of all. People love money. It's the Egel HaZahav. It's the golden calf today. It's idolatry. People worship it. And when people fall for it, it's hard to blame them. But there's always a reason for it. In other words, it just could be that they were not very well focused on the Ikar, Tachlit HaChaim, on what is really our life's purpose. What are we here for? People forget themselves. They become distracted. And they see all these beautiful diamonds. They think they're diamonds. You know, precious stones. You know, loose, grab, take. But you're not going to take this with you to the grave. Don't you realize that? They forget. They're shiny. They're tempting. They think that's what's important. But what about the mitzvot? Those are the real gems. But if one does not learn, does not focus on it, does not think about it, does not contemplate it, does not ponder the greatness of Hashem and His mission in life, does not take off some time during the day, during the week, not enough once a year, during the day or during the week, yes, to think about these things, then it's very easy for him, especially if he's in the wrong company, to fall prey to his yetzarim, to his own personal evil inclination, whatever it may be. One person has a problem, a weakness with kavod, honor. He loves honor. Another one is lazy. Another one is angry. Another one loves money. Another one has a problem because he's a womanizer. People have different weaknesses. Yes, we can become close to angels, but we're still human as long as we're in this world. And obviously, the more one learns musar, ethics, and one is immersed in Torah, then hopefully he will have the protection he needs from the Yetzer Hara. So, the very, very beginning, the foundation of all foundations in Avodat Hashem involves a certain level of Yirat Hashem, a certain level of fear for Hashem. Because that is the ikaron, that is really the principle, the main principle behind the service of Hashem, that we serve Him like an Eved Oved et Adono, as a servant serves his master, which is mitoch yirah, out of fear. Now when I use the word fear, I don't like the word fear in English, because when people think of fear, they think, oh, I'm afraid. So there's different synonyms for fear. There's the word awe, A-W-E. Okay. In Hebrew too, you have pahad, fright, fear. Yirah is not used so much when we're talking about mundane things. U yareh mimenu, u pohed mimenu, as we say in Hebrew. He's afraid. He's fearful of him. Yirah connotes a higher level form of fear. Not afraid of, I'm afraid, like from a wild animal. I'm fearful of him because I respect him. That is what the word awe really is. And that is the fear that a servant needs to have for his master. Otherwise he won't do a good job. He doesn't care. He doesn't have the minimal fear. So this is the way to start. This is the way we begin to serve Hashem. And this is what hopefully will be taught to children early on. Wear that kippah on your head if it's a boy. So you should recall at all times that Hashem is above you, observing you, documenting every single deed that you have done. And upstairs there's a long video of your entire life that they're going to show you what you did right and what you did wrong. So the earlier we take in this information, hopefully the more we will be sensitive to this and not think we can get away with it. Because what does a ganav think? What does a thief think? Doesn't he know that there are jails? Doesn't he know that people were caught? It's not going to happen to me. I'm going to get away with it. If he would know for sure that he's going to prison, the following day, you think he would do it? Of course not. And even if it's the following year, you think he would do it. But a thief thinks, at least a normal thief, he's going to get away with it. They won't catch him. There's no yirah. There's no fear for Hashem. You know, the Torah tells us something very, very fascinating. There's a difference between a ganav and a gazlan. In English, the closest translation to these terms are as follows. A ganav is a thief that comes at night. He doesn't want to be caught. He doesn't want to be seen. And a gazlan is a highway robber that comes even during the daylight. I should say an armed robber. And he's not afraid of anybody. Even during the day, he will come and hold you up. What's the difference between them as far as the punishment? They stole something. They have to pay for it. Give it back. Do you know that the ganav, the one that stole at night, has to pay double? More than the gazlan, more than the robber who came during the day? Yes. The one that comes during the day is not afraid of God, not afraid of human beings. He comes during the day. The ganav is afraid of human beings and he's not afraid of God. He comes at night. He doesn't want to be caught. He doesn't want to be seen. He hides. Says, you have more fear for human beings than you have for God. You pay double. The other guy doesn't care about anyone. So, okay, it doesn't mean he's any better. He's obviously in some ways worse. He doesn't have any fear whatsoever. But this one shows more fear for human beings. So this is a very important principle in the Avodat of Hashem, that there has to be a minimal of yirah in order to do anything, even mitzvot aseh. So he goes on in this chapter to explain as follows. It's important to keep in mind at all times that shoresh ha'avodah, reshit shoresh ha'avodah, the beginning of any service of Hashem has to involve yirah, even though yirah is the root of sur merah, of staying away, keeping away from doing that which is wrong. And ahava, we said, is the shoresh for aseh tov. Nonetheless, we still have to awaken. We have to have Yirat Hashem at all times in our mind. And even if we're talking about the Yirat Hashem ha-mesuteret belev kol Yisrael, the low-level Yirah is that level of fear that is concealed in the heart of every Jew. Ever since Matan Torah, there's a certain level of Yirah and Ahava in every Jew. You want to get to see an example of that? Haven't you ever heard or seen a Jew that was never at the Kotel, who's bichlal, totally not religious, distant, very distant from Judaism, and all of a sudden he approaches the Kotel, and tears come down his eyes. Where did these tears come from? Mapitom, just now, he has nothing to do with Torah and Yahadut. What did the wall do something to him? Apparently his neshama detected something. Not the physical body, not his mind, because he doesn't have any knowledge of his roots. There are many like that, many people that cannot even explain what happened to them. They don't know. All of a sudden they see themselves crying. And people have gone over, is anything wrong? Can I help you? Because it wasn't just a couple of tears. The guy was weeping like a little child. What happened to you? First time in the Kotel, and he was very moved. People have been moved by all kinds of things. But this is something of Kedusha. Kedusha is powerful. Just like the opposite is powerful, Tumah, in a very different way. People have been swept away by Tumah in a very bad way, in a negative way. Kedusha also is very, very powerful. Depending on the level of the neshama, depending on the roots of that soul. Maybe his grandfather was a very special person. We don't know. Maybe this is a reincarnation of some neshama. There could be other factors involved in why someone is moved all of a sudden. But there's no doubt that Min HaShamayim, they're always helping us. They're always showing us the way. They're always encouraging us, sending us all kinds of shlichim messengers. There have been people who received a CD or a cassette, depending which year we're talking about. He said there's no more CDs, huh? And sure enough, that was exactly what they needed to hear. That was the message that they needed to hear. They were suicidal. They were depressed. They were going through some sort of trouble. They needed chizuk. They needed some encouragement. And it was exactly that message in the tape, in the lecture, that gave them further encouragement, strengthened them. That's Min HaShamayim, that's Hashgacha. And we'll be talking a little bit about Hashgacha here too. How Hashem does not only supervise the world. What Judaism teaches, one of the things that Judaism teaches, is that there's something called Hashgacha Pratit on every individual. And every human being could be as well. But it's not always there at all times on every human being. But on Am Yisrael it is. We made a commitment, Na'aseh v'nishma, and Hashem said, Atem tiyuli mamlechet kohanim. You will be an Am Segula to me. You will be extra close to me. Extra close means extra protection, extra supervision, and therefore miracles. And I think everyone who knows a little bit about Jewish history can attest to that. Open miracles throughout history, clear miracles, that even the non-Jewish world has been able to observe and attest. Yes, it's a miracle. Where does that come from? A special connection we have with Hashem. So, he says it's important to keep in mind at all times that one needs to be me'orer, that yirah. At the very least, the yirah hativ'it, the natural yirah that we were just describing, that is there, that many people are not even aware it's there, but it sometimes comes out. A natural yirah that is concealed in the heart of every Jew, which says basically, don't rebel against the king. You may not be observant of all the mitzvot, but don't openly rebel against him. Now, this yirah could be bidgalut libo, or at the very least bemocho, he says. This could be very, very, very strongly expressed and felt in his heart, or it could be at the very least in his mind. He can think about it. Sometimes people do not have any feelings towards something that they can't see, that they don't really identify with. But they know about it, they somehow recognize the importance of it, That's called b'mocho. In other words, in their mind, they think about it, and they're fearful. Ideally, it should be galut libo. It should be expressed. One should really show, demonstrate his fear and love for Hashem in performing the mitzvot. But not everybody has developed that. So at the very least, awaken that fear either in the heart or in the mind. And how do you do that? By contemplating the greatness of Hashem. Marabu ma'asecha Hashem. Looking around the creation of the world, looking at the anatomy of the human body. Today, with all the technology, there's a lot of tools that enable us to see the gadlut, the greatness of Hashem. Much more than 100 years ago, much more even than 50 years ago. It says, use that. Use that lidbonen. But people don't use itbonenut. In other words, they don't meditate, they don't reflect enough, they don't think. They want machines to think for them. But here, this is a great necessity. We need to think. We need to use our minds. That's what it's for. An animal doesn't need too much brains. He has instinct. The mother lion takes care of her cubs. Whether it's a lion from Iran, when they used to have lions, right? Or whether it's a lion from Africa. The only lions left in Asia are in India. So it makes no difference where the lion is from. A female lion will take care of her cubs. Don't get close to her. Don't get close to a mother bear. Mother bear, yeah, why not the father bear? The father bear is dangerous too, by the way. But the mother has instincts for her cubs. Instinct. Nature. You know, it's interesting that they sometimes raise little cubs. Human beings have raised them, took care of them for whatever reason. They were found. The mother abandoned them. The mother was killed. And they raised them for a while. Then they let them loose. Even though they claim that letting them loose after a while may not succeed because they may not survive in the wild, but I guess that's not always the case, because they found that certain little tigers that were raised by human beings, after a while, they were able to hunt on their own. Right away, they knew what to do. They knew what to do and how to catch it. It's embedded in their system. They don't have to think too much about it. They have a certain fear of that which is stronger than them, of the unknown, sure. As I always use the example of deer running away from predators. Why doesn't the deer just tell the animal that's pursuing them, okay, you want me for dinner? Go ahead and take me. No, Hashem says you will have the instinct of running away, of having fear, of wanting to survive. Where did that come from? Hashem put that in animals. They're afraid. They have a yir'ah. They want to survive. Do they have ahava, by the way? Does an animal have ahava, love? Yeah. Anybody that owns a dog will say, of course. Yeah. A dog is a man's best friend. But that is not exactly ahava. Ahava is a very complex word. Very complex. Because in Judaism, ahava really means to give, to care about someone. Ahava could also mean to be protective. You care about someone, and if you care about someone enough, then you do for them. So a dog has a certain possessiveness for his owner. He's possessive of his owner. He's grateful in a sense. He has certain powerful instincts that are very, very much developed that connect him very, very much, either as a security or simply as feeling an attachment and a closeness to one who takes care of him. Why does the dog have it and the cat not so much? Hashem made it so, for whatever reason. It's just a fact that certain animals make better pets than others. Some pets have hurt their owners. So some are wilder and some are tamer. But anyway, most of that is instinct. True love and fear of what we're talking about, only the human being has, because he has da'at. What's da'at? Chokhmah and binah, most people understand somewhat. Wisdom and binah, understanding. Chokhmah, but what's da'at? That is when you take all that you've learned through Chokhmah and Binah and you process it and you apply it and it becomes part of you. That is something that you connect to. As the Torah describes the intimate union between Adam and Chava as Vayeda Adam et Ishto. He knew her. He connected to her. In other words, they became one. That's that. So when one uses his Chokhmah and Binah to ponder the creation, to ponder the words of Hashem in the Torah, and he can use all of that later through his da'at to apply it. In what way? Through Ahava and Yirah, as he will soon explain. Because da'at consists of Ahava and Yirah. It has two very powerful arms, I guess we can call it, because of what it is intended for. It is intended to take that which we know, that which we learned, and apply it. Not just know about it. Curiosity, no. You have the mind to be able not just to calculate numbers like a computer. You have the mind that no animal has, no machine can ever have, and that is to apply what you've learned, to use it in some constructive way. So he says, therefore, how do you come about through this yirah? Through idbonenut, by pondering the greatness of Hashem, at least, in other words, at the low level, to ponder the creation of Hashem. Ashehu malchut kol olamim elyonim v'tachtonim, he says. After all, he's the king of all the worlds. He's in charge. He's the boss of everything. Ve'ihu memale kol ha'amin v'sovev kol almin. Very interesting Kabbalistic concept that many people perhaps do not even have an idea what it means. Hashem is the one that fills the world and surrounds all the worlds. What's the difference? To surround all the worlds, to fill all the worlds. Very important idea, even though he doesn't elaborate here, but the Kabbalah does. When we talk about the light of Hashem, not that there is a light, but in order for us to understand spiritual terms, we sometimes need to borrow physical terms. A light that is able to reach great distances, a light that shines, a light that is powerful, that illuminates, that shows the way. The light of the sun, for example, that gives warmth and energy and life. So this is the light, but the light of Hashem, a spiritual light that fills the entire universe in two ways. This Or, as it's called in Kabbalah, Or Ein Sof, without any limits, surrounds the world, surrounds the universe, and fills the universe. Well, fills the universe is very, very simple. It's relatively simple to understand. It gives vitality to everything. If Hashem would remove His light that fills every living being, every creation of His, for 1 second, it would cease to exist. Umemalet ha'olam. So the hiyut, the vitality that everything has in this world, from a little rock to a big star, everything needs to be there in order to be able to stay alive. So that light of Hashem memaleh gives vitality and fills everything. But when it fills everything betzimtzum, as we've been talking about all along. Tzimtzum means that light is diminished in the physical world. We are on the receiving end. It's such a brilliant, powerful light that we cannot completely relate to it, because we're in the physical realm. That's spiritual. So in order for us to be able to get a little bit of it, it has to go through tzimtzumim, livushim, garments, until it reaches us. But it's still memaleh. It still fills the entire world. There's not one spot without it. Sovev kol alamim, it surrounds. It is what enabled creation. Yesh mi'ayin. Yesh mi'ayin means ex nihilo in Latin. Something from nothing, from zero. Man takes raw material and produces something with it. But Hashem can take nothing. In other words, He creates something from nothing. And that is the light that's Sovev kol alamim. It's the light that is without tzimtzum, without any limits whatsoever, that fills the universe in a form called Or Mekif, which is something we spoke briefly about before, that the human being has a little bit of that on his neshama. From the outside, it could be an Or Mekif, not just a light that permeates his neshama, but a light that is from the outside. And that is a more spiritual concept. Even though the Or HaMemale is also spiritual, but it's contained in the physical world. Whereas that is completely in the spiritual world. And therefore it's called Sovev. It surrounds, it brought creation into being, Yesh Mi'ain, plus it fills the entire universe on the level of Mekif, which is a higher level than Memale, from the outside. And perhaps a concept that is related to that is the concept of Ashgahat Hashem, from above. In other words, there's a certain level of protection, there's a certain level of connection from the upper worlds to the lower worlds, that Hashem is always there. His presence is always there in an equal way. Equal because Memale Kol Almim is not equal. Memale Kol Almim depends on the world. Is it Asiyah? Is it Yetzirah, Bria? There's different levels depending on who the receiver is, which Olam he is in. And this Olam from above is equally everywhere. It's a light that is undiminished. All right, I figured that I would explain this a little bit more in depth. So he says Hashem is filling the entire universe and also surrounds everything there is. And he quotes the pasuk, Tashamayim v'ta'aretz ani maleh. He fills the heavens and the earth. But what happens after he fills the heavens and the earth? He lets go. He lets go of all those worlds and focuses his reign, his kingdom, on the Jewish people. So not only is there, for the most part, life only in this planet, I'm not saying there can't be life elsewhere, but from what we know, from our sources and from what we know in science too, there's only life here, at least the kind of life that we know. So not only is his focus on this world, his greater focus is on the Jewish people. Bichlal, and alav bifrat, and on every individual, as I said before, ashgacha pratit. So there's a certain supervision from above on the Jewish people, a stronger, greater focus on them, and on every individual. So, what do we get from this? Well, rabbis tell us, Chayav Adam Lomar Bishvili Nivra Olam. When a Jew ponders the greatness of Hashem, what does he get out of that? He's supposed to get a little bit of Yirah. It's supposed to awaken in him the Yirah. But why should it affect him so much? If his thinking is, well, Hashem perhaps is close to the Jewish people, but who says he's close to me? Maybe he doesn't listen to my prayer. A lot of this book, this Tanya, remember, is geared towards individuals who may say, well, I'm never going to be a big tzaddik anyway, so why should I work so hard? Could I really, really be someone special in the eyes of Hashem? Does he really care about me? So it's important to remember that one of his messages, at least in this Sefer, which is called Sefer HaBenonim, not for tzaddikim, who are always struggling, but hopefully succeeding in doing the right thing because they are sincere, it can only happen if the individual is not completely discouraged and keeps in mind that the world was created for him alone. Bishvili nivra olam. Forget about the Jewish people now as a whole. That's true. Hashem focuses on them. But you are important too as an individual. You're important as part of the nation. That's what minyan is all about. We want a minyan of 10 people that has power. Tzibur has power, sure. Klal Yisrael, the Jewish nation, definitely special and important. But even the individual on his level is important. So it's important for the Jew to remember this at all times. He is miyuchad, he is special. Once he understands that, it will be easier for him to be mekabel ol malchut shamayim. Because what is this yirah for? We started off saying that yirah obviously is important because that's what's going to deter us. No? But here he's telling us, remember, yirah is also fundamental for observance of all the mitzvot. For anybody wanting to be close to Hashem, you need yirah. Forget about positive and negative commandments. You want a connection with Him, you need yirah. Well, in order to be able to develop yirah, even at the lower level, there has to be a commitment. What's the commitment? Ol malchut shamayim. When we say Shema Yisrael, that is Ol malchut shamayim. Why has the Shema Yisrael always been important? So important that people that were about to die, that's what they thought about. That's the essence of the emunah. In those words, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Right? And in Islam, they pretty much borrowed the Shahada from these words too. La ilaha illallah. There's only one God. There's no other God. So, the commitment of accepting Ol Malchut Shamayim, Ol Torah Mitzvot, the yoke of heaven, the yoke of Torah Mitzvot, is what is going to help him continue to develop that Yirah and later on the Hava as well. In all kinds of inyanim, in all kinds of avodot, he says. Because there are many opportunities to do the will of Hashem. So Ol Malchut Shamayim is number one. And you know what? I have a surprise for you. It's something that is very remote for many, many people. Ol Malchut Shamayim, I'm committed to Hashem. I wish everybody would at least say those words. I accept upon myself to be a servant of Hashem. Okay, I'm not doing everything yet, maybe, but I can. You know how powerful that statement is. We started off the shiur by talking about patriotism. You want to be a patriot? Okay, maybe you don't know that you have to observe all these laws and rules. Are you willing to learn? Yes, you want to be a patriot, you have to learn. You have to show commitment. For those of you who remember the Vietnam War, I think maybe you remember, you're old enough. You know how many Americans went to Canada to avoid the draft? Now, maybe that's not the best example because Vietnam was not a war that you can easily justify. So many American lives were lost, and if you did not agree with this war, you know, we can't blame them. But a true patriot goes along. A true patriot is devoted to a cause, even though he doesn't fully believe, but you know, he's a patriot. He cares about his country. And people who cheat on their taxes intentionally, talk about it in this country. And the reason I say this country is because there may be situations where certain countries are so corrupt and they take 50% of your money that I'm not going to tell the people, you know, that what you're doing is very, very wrong, even though it is wrong, but I can understand, you know, a little bit those situations where in certain countries people may be tempted to believe that it's wrong that the government is taking their money and they're working so hard. They're better off not working sometimes because they're like slaves. But I'm talking about the United States of America. In many ways, is very fair. In many ways, this country is very, very fair. It may not be 100% perfect because it's run by human beings. And when there's no connection to God, unfortunately as today, there isn't as much as it was 200 years ago, then things deteriorate on the moral scale, the moral level. But still, Kabbalah Ol Malchut Shamayim, in essence, when it comes to being a good citizen and a patriot, is very similar. It means that I care, that I will do my best, that I'm interested in this. If a Jew starts off with this, and he says therefore the Shema Yisrael with Kavanah, he really means the words he says, he's on the right track. As we will soon see, even if he has no yirah whatsoever, but he starts off with something, he will go a long way. And that's why I never tell someone who wants to perhaps consider becoming more religious, you got to do this, you got to do that, you can't do this, you start bombarding him with so many things. It's too much. Tafasta merubelo tafasta. Rabbis tell us if you grab too much, you know, he will never do anything. In Spanish, there's a saying, el que abarca mucho, poco aprieta. One who grabs a lot will hold on to very little. So it's not fair, it's not right to start off with too many things. But the basics, Shema Yisrael, do you really mean it? If you do, it's very, very meaningful. So the hitbonenut that we just talked about, the reflection on God's world, helps with Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim, with going the next step to committing oneself. He goes on to explain that this hitbonenut in Malchut Hashem applies, of course, to kol prat uprat, how Hashem is not only supervising the entire world, but every individual. As he says, "V'hinei Hashem nitzav alav u'maleh kol haaretz kevodo, mabit alav u'bochen klayot v'lev." Hashem examines the hearts of everyone. He supervises every individual, if he's serving him or not. So Hashem is aware of everyone's actions. The more we think about these things, the more it will help us. And this observation from above is at all times. When the Chafetz Chaim first heard of the record player, see, now we can understand how if human beings can record their own voice, you think Hashem doesn't have a more powerful machine to record all that we've said? If we have cameras, you don't think they have cameras upstairs? They have very powerful zoom lenses upstairs, I guarantee you. They can zoom in, even in the closet. You can't hide from Hashem. If we have this technology, you don't think Hashem has it? So he goes on to say, therefore one has to stand before him be'ima v'yira, with fear. Ke'omed lifnei melech, like you would be standing before a king. And he should think about these thoughts at all times, according to his ability, according to his understanding, and according to the time available to him, he says. Everybody according to what they can, but do something. Yamik b'machshava azu. In other words, he should deepen his thoughts, immerse himself in these thoughts before he learns Torah and before he performs a mitzvah. And he gives the example of talit and tefillin. So he says, besides pondering the greatness of Hashem, you should also consider how this Or Ein Sof that surrounds the entire universe is that Etzon HaElyon is ultimately, this is the will of Hashem that is dressing itself up in the letters and in the Chokhmah of the Torah, in the tzitzit and in the tefillin that he's about to put on. So here he is making a real connection to Hashem. He's not just putting something symbolic on himself. This is symbolic of what our forefathers did. No, this is actually connecting him to Hashem, because the light of Hashem is being dressed up in the letters that are written, in the Torah that he's learning, in the mitzvot that he's performing. And through the reading or learning of the Torah or performance of mitzvot, he's actually drawing from this light on top of him. On what is he drawing the light? On his neshama, on that chelek eloka, on that part of God that is within his physical body. To do what? To include that in his light. In other words, to connect. When we talk about connecting to Hashem, this is what we mean. That our soul is able to connect to Hashem, even though it's always, in a sense, connected because our neshama is from Him. But because we're in the physical world, we're somewhat detached. You know, as we've been explaining a little bit about what it means to be begalut in the klipot. Chaz v'shalom, sometimes the neshama of certain individuals can sink so low that it is in the form of exile within the impure shells. That means it's in darkness and doesn't see any light. And it's, you know, in such a predicament that it can't easily remove itself. Like quicksand, you need help, outside help sometimes. Or I should say most of the time, to get out of it. So when one is trapped, very, very difficult sometimes to remove him. You need to, little by little, shine the light on him until he gains back that strength. So this is what we're talking about, connecting in a spiritual way, so that umbilical cord, the spiritual umbilical cord to Hashem, is never severed. And if it's not severed, if it's continuously connected, it means that this individual is able to elevate himself to great heights, because even though physically we stop growing, spiritually we can continue to grow. People have attained great levels of Kedusha and Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration, because of their great levels of sanctity. So in performing this mitzvot, what is his kavanah? His kavanah, at the very least, is that these mitzvot, this Torah, should be mashpia, should influence his neshama. In other words, that it should strengthen it. It should enable it to form a very strong connection. It should benefit it. So the observance of mitzvot, the learning of Torah, the prayer is not just a mitzvah that we're fulfilling, we're complying with His will. It's actually doing something for us. As I've said many, many times, people don't realize that Hashem gave us mitzvot for us. It's to benefit us not only in the afterlife as a reward for doing His will, but in order for us to have a better life here, to refine our character, for example. So any kedusha, any ruchaniut, any spirituality goes a long way to making the human being a more beautiful creation than what he started off with. So Lemashal, he says with tefillin, for example, when we put on the tefillin, likalel v'levatel bechinat chokhmato binato benafsho, that our chokhmah, our binah, of our nefesh, of our soul, our wisdom and understanding should be included and should become a part of his chokhmah and his binah. Mebchinat chokhmato b'binato shel ein sof, which is dressed up, he says, in tefillin, in the parasha of Kadesh and Vayakiv Yacha. There's 4 parashiyot. So the chokhmah and the binah of Hashem is dressed up in the parasha of Kadesh and Vayakiv Yacha. So by having the proper kavanah, we're able to include our chokhmah and binah in Hashem's chokhmah and binah. What does that really mean? It means not to use our chokhmah and binah for our own selfish reasons, but to want to use our chokhmah, our understanding, and our knowledge, our wisdom, to serve Him. And libatel v'likalel b'chinat hadat benafsho, the category of that, which includes chesed and gvura, which are yirah and ahava, in the b'china, in the category of dat elyon of Hashem. So again, we want to include that aspect of that category within us called dat in His dat. And this, of course, is a dat that consists of chesed and gvura, or ahava and yirah. And these are dressed up in the parasha of Shema and Vayam Shamua. Now, the Shulchan Aruch only says a couple words about this. That idea when we put on the tefillin is l'sha'abed halev ve'hamoach. That our kavanah, the simple kavanah, not the Kabbalistic kavanah, should be to commit our heart and mind to Hashem. I like to explain it the following way, as I've seen in some commentary. As you know, the head tefillin has 4 compartments, and the hand tefillin has 1 big compartment. They both have 4 parashiyot, but in the hand it's 1, and in the head you have 4. Why 4 and 1? Because we're committing our 5 senses to Hashem. The hand is one of the senses, so there's only 1. But in the head, there's 4 of the senses, 4 of the 5. You have the vision, you have the hearing, you have the taste, and you have the smell. So we're committing, that's what the Shulchan Aruch is saying. That is exactly, at the very basic level, the kavanah, when we put on tefillin, we want to be. We express our willingness to be mesha'abed, to commit our senses, everything that we do for Hashem, not for us. In this way, he says that neshama and all its halakea, asichlim v'rikshim, all its intellectual and emotive faculties will be influenced. During the time he puts on tefillin, in other words, if we think like that, they will be influenced. They will do something for us. These thoughts, this kavanot. And when he puts on tzitzit, what should be his kavanah, as it's brought down in the Zohar? Lamshich alav malchuto, to draw to him the kingdom of Hashem, which is malchut kol alamim, the kingdom of all the worlds. Liyachda alenu alidei mitzvah zu, in other words, that it should be focused on us through this mitzvah, which means that we feel that He is truly our King. When we do that, what are we saying? That before that He was not? Yes. When we do that, it should feel to us like we are right now inaugurating Him and accepting Him as a King. That kind of a feeling. Not something that is routine, something that we recall from the past, something that our parents told us. No, this is the feeling that we want to express. This is what we're saying, that we're accepting Him as the King. So he says, but what happens if after all this, there's not too much eimah, not too much fear, but pachad, revealed in his heart, even though he's trying everything? Still, it's okay, because if he at the very least, kibel al atzmo ol malchut shamayim, if he accepted the yoke of heaven, and he draws the yirah, at least in his mind, he thinks about it, I want it, I believe in it, I identify with it, then this Kabbalah, this commitment is true. It is undoubtedly true, it is real, it is acceptable, because he says that's the nature of nefashot in Israel, the Jewish souls, that they don't really want to rebel against the king. So deep down, there's something deep down that tells them, I accept it as the truth. They may argue with you, they may say, prove it to me, I don't believe it, But deep down there is. It's concealed. In some people it's very much buried. But it could one day come out. Never give up on anyone. It could one day come out. So the Torah that one learns or the mitzvah that one performs, any Torah that he learns or any mitzvah that he will perform, as a result of this Kabbalah, as a result of this commitment, it will help. In other words, it's the commitment and the yirah that a person has at the very least in his mind, even though it's not in his heart, that will constitute the work that he's doing as avodah shlema. He's not at the highest level, but because of the commitment, because of the few moments that he thinks about the yirah, Hashem says, that's something. I do consider it as an avodah. You are serving me. Maybe on a very low level, but this is still called serving Hashem. Like any service that an Eved does for his master or his king. But what if he does it only with ahava, out of love, to connect to Hashem through his Torah mitzvot? That's not called complete avodah. Why not? Because it's like a bird with one wing. Can a bird fly with one wing? Not exactly. So only with ahava, it's not complete. Only with yirah, it's also not complete. That's not called an avodat eved, at least. It's not considered a complete service of a servant. The Torah, after all, says, "Va'avatem et Hashem Elokechem, oto ta'avodu." That's not complete service. And he brings down here the Zohar, as the Zohar says, what do we do with a bull? Like the bull that you put on him first, a yoke. What's the purpose of the yoke? What are you trying to accomplish? To get out of him some benefit for the world. You first have to place the yoke. Only then can you get some benefit from this bull that has tremendous power. So it's the same thing over here. First, a Jew has to accept upon himself Kabbalat ol Malchut Shamayim bekadmita at first. There's no Kabbalat ol Malchut Shamayim, sincere desire or interest in this, if it's not at all in existence within him, lo sharya bekedusha, then there's no holiness there. There's no spark. How will he ever advance? How can he connect? How could his prayers of his learning the Torah go up? Not only that, not only will it not go up, it may even cool off completely. As he says, as he brings down in the name of the Raya Mehemna, that everyone needs two bchinot, everyone needs two levels or two categories. You need a category or the level of a servant and the level of a son. As we explained earlier, there's two kinds of levels, they're very, very different, but we need both. And he says, even though there is a son that is also an Eved, but you can never come, nonetheless, to that level of being an Eved Hashem, a true Eved, without first having Yirah Ila'ah. And here he introduces something called Yirah Ila'ah, a higher form of Yirah. In other words, to become a true Eved Hashem, you cannot come to that unless you have the Yirah Ila'ah. And I'll explain that in a minute. So he says, but even if you don't succeed in awakening this in your heart, at the very least, if you have it b'moach, in the mind, it's better than nothing. And what if you don't feel it, not in your mind and not in your, in other words, you have no thought about it, you don't feel any yirah and any shame whatsoever, and because of that, the individual does never awake to want to have an interest in pondering the Malchut of Hashem. And this could be, by the way, he says, because of the low level of his soul, that is from the low levels of the Sfirot in Asiyah. As we explained in the past, there are some souls that are lower than others. Still, since he at least has a kavanah, what kavanah? I want to. Nothing awakened in him. Nothing is so much in his heart. But he said the words, I want to be a servant of the king. You're hired. I don't need your resume. You really want it? You're hired. That's called Avodah Gemora. That's called the service of Hashem. Why? Because really, Yirah and Avodah are really two commandments of the 613 commandments. And one is not me'akev the other. Even if you don't have the other, you can have one. One is better than not having anything at all. One is not me'akev the other. You can start off with one. So even he says, you don't have a fully developed fear, even in the mind. If your intent is to study, to serve Hashem, then it is considered as though you fulfilled the mitzvah properly. Look how important is just the kavanah. Here we're talking about the kavanah, meaning the willingness. I want it. That in itself. That is why when you ask somebody, do you put on tefillin, and he says no, correct him and tell him, don't say no, say not yet. It's much better when a person says no. It's going to be harder for him later on to say yes. Well, not yet. Just say not yet. Kavanah is very important here, the intent. Just to finish up the part that we're doing today, that when one says that he wants, he says in reality, mekayem mitzvat yirah. He does fulfill to some level the mitzvah of the fear of Hashem in his mind. Because at the very least, at that moment, the morah shamayim alav, the fear of heaven on him, is like morah of basar badam. It's like the fear of a human being, a mortal being. And he brings the example of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who told his students right before he passed away, you want the best advice I can give you for life, the most powerful lesson that will help you in many, many ways. May it be that the fear of heaven should be upon you like the fear that you have for the policeman, for the judge, more for the human judge. So the students, they reacted. Really, Rabbi, that's it? He says, Alevai, inshallah. This alone, if you have this, you'll be in good shape. He says, why? Because a lot of people, when they sin, all they ask for is that they shouldn't be caught because they're ashamed of people. In other words, had it not been for that shame, God forbid, they would do all kinds of things. So many people are just held back because they don't want to be caught by people. If you would have the morah shamayim, therefore, like people have for basar vadam, that little bit of shame, that will help you a lot. Even if you can't get the fear of Hashem on the highest level, let it be that you get this amount of fear, because it will help you in observing the mitzvot. But this is a low-level yirah. And this is a level called yirat chet hakodemet lechokhmato, the level of yirah that comes before the chokhmah. What does that mean? In Pirkei Avot, if you ever learn Pirkei Avot, you will see something very interesting. It says, Im en yirah in chokhmah. If there's no fear of heaven, you can never have the wisdom of Hashem. Okay, you never want to learn. No, but then it says, Im en chokhmah en yirah. It says the other way around. But if there's no chokhmah, there's also no yirah. But wait a minute, which one comes first? Both of them are true, he says. There's a lower level of yirah and there's the higher level of yirah. If there's no low level yirah, you'll never have an interest in learning Torah. Im en yirah in chokhmah, you will not want to know the wisdom of Hashem. Now, if there's no wisdom of Hashem, you'll never have yirah. That's the higher form of yirah. How come people don't speed in the freeway? The ones who don't speed. For 3 reasons. They don't want to get a ticket. That's one level, one reason. What's another reason? It's dangerous to go beyond the speed limit. After all, that's what the speed limit is for. What's the 3rd level, and the highest and the ideal? They don't speed because that is the law. And they want to comply with the law. There's a lot of people that fear the Averah because they fear Gehenom. They don't want to get a ticket. It's a very expensive ticket. Then there are those who don't want to ruin their neshama. It's a higher level. Then there's those who fear Hashem because they love Hashem so much. He commanded us. Only because of Him I don't want to do it. It's not because of the sin, because of the Gehenom. He said so. That's the higher form of Yirah that he's talking about here. You can only get to that if there's Chokhmah. One who has studied Torah, who understands a little bit what this is, he can appreciate this. That's called Yirah Boshet, the fear with shame. 2 kinds of Yirah, even though I just told you 3 kinds. But without any Yirah whatsoever, he will never grow. He will never be able to connect. You cannot raise the tefillot and kavanot and mitzvot just with ahava, like just with Yirah. With one, without the other, you cannot. You need both, as we said before, the hilu urahimu, the love and fear of Hashem are like the wings of the bird. Just the Yirah by itself is one wing. It can also not go up too high. It's called Avodat Eved. But we said it has to be Avodat Ben too, the service of a son, as well as the service of an Eved. So what do we need to do? If one has a little bit of Yirah, he also has to awaken, he says, the natural love that we have, that is concealed within our heart, that at the very least this love should be in his mind. He should talk about it, he should desire it, he should say, I want this, I want to develop it. One day, hopefully, will become strong in this area. To continuously remember in his mind, and to say it. The words are powerful. To continuously review it, to learn about it, so that the love of Hashem also appears in his, at the very least in his mind, in order to be able to dafkabo, to connect with him. He concludes for now that this is what the simple kavanah should be for every one of us. When we learn Torah and when we perform a mitzvah, that our nefesh should connect with him. Our nefesh elokit and the chiyunit, our spiritual soul, the divine soul, and our vital soul that is within our body, along with their levushim, their garments, that should be our goal. That's what we should always aspire and always think about and talk about and learn about, is that B'ezrat Hashem, we will do whatever we can to connect in the most powerful way with Hashem, through love and through fear, realizing that this may take effort and this may take time, but to demonstrate a willingness, we want it. How do you demonstrate it? You pursue it regularly. Not once a year on Yom Kippur. Yes, I promise. Yom Kippur, I promise. No, everybody promises. No, on a regular basis, and that can only come about, as we said many times, through learning Torah, becoming aware, taking a time to think about it. Time is up almost. If you're past 60, I'm sorry to tell you, the time is almost up. B'ezrat Hashem, you should all live long years, but you have to be realistic. Time is short. What are we accomplishing? So at the very least, let's do our best to demonstrate to Hashem that we want, and we have a rule. It's a very, very powerful rule, and I guarantee it from experience. Whoever demonstrates to Hashem that he really wants, he will receive his assistance. Hashem will help him. Even if it's difficult and it's not easy, it takes time to grow. But if you want it, Hashem will help you. This is a very, very reassuring to those who are discouraged, those who are doing teshuvah, and they feel it's very hard in the beginning. Don't worry. Just like a baby learns to walk slowly, but the Father is holding his hands. Eventually the Father is going to let go because he knows you will be able to do it. Hashem trusts in us that we have the capability. He wants us to do the best job. He wants us to succeed. But he has to be fair. He created a Yetzirah, otherwise it will be too easy. So it's not going to be too easy, but it's never beyond our reach. And that is why he emphasizes time after time, Ki karov elecha advar, don't forget, it's very close to you, it's very accessible to you to do the will of Hashem.